Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the ESV Marathon and looked at the stars through the main viewing screen. His ship was the newest and most powerful vessel in the Earth Space Navy. For 3 months now, they had been patrolling the outer edges of the Kepler system, watching for any signs of alien activity or threats to human colonies. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep from monitoring stations. Jake had been a starship captain for 15 years, and he knew that space was mostly empty and boring. Most days passed without anything interesting happening at all. Lisa Parker sat at the science station, running her usual scans of nearby space. She was the ship's chief science officer, and one of the smartest people Jake had ever met. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the standard blue uniform of the Earth Space Navy. Ryan Bell worked at the communications console nearby. He was young and eager, only 2 years out of the academy. His job was to monitor all radio signals and keep contact with Earth and the other human colonies. Everything changed when Lisa's station started beeping loudly. She looked at her screens with confusion and then surprise. Her face went pale as she read the data that was coming in. "Captain," she said in a voice that was barely above a whisper, "I'm picking up a ship on long-range sensors." Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of ship?" "Is it one of ours?" Lisa shook her head slowly. "Sir, the computer says it's the ESV Horizon." The bridge went completely silent. Everyone knew about the Horizon. It was the most famous lost ship in human history. 127 years ago, it had left Earth carrying 50,000 colonists to start a new settlement beyond the local cluster. The ship was supposed to make a simple hyperspace jump, but it never arrived at its destination. "No trace of it was ever found. That's impossible," Jake said. "The Horizon has been missing for over a century." "I know, sir, but the sensor readings match exactly. Ship size, hull configuration, even the engine signature. It's definitely the Horizon." Jake looked at the data on Lisa's screen. The readings showed a large colony ship sitting motionless in space about 2 million kilometers away. According to the sensors, the ship was in perfect condition. "Ryan, try to make contact with them," Jake ordered. Ryan's hands moved quickly over his console. "This is the ESV Marathon calling unknown vessel. Please respond." They waited for several minutes, but there was no answer. Jake was about to tell Ryan to try again when a voice came through the speakers. "ESV Marathon, this is the ESV Horizon. Commander Kevin Walsh speaking." Jake felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. Kevin Walsh had been the captain of the Horizon when it disappeared. According to the records, he would be over 150 years old now if he was still alive. "This is Captain Morrison of the Marathon. Commander Walsh, we need to confirm your identity. The Horizon has been missing for 127 years. There was a long pause before Walsh replied. "Captain Morrison, I don't understand what you mean. We left Earth 3 years ago. We've been establishing a colony on a world we call Haven. My crew is ready to return home with our mission report." Jake looked at Lisa, who was shaking her head in disbelief. Her sensors were showing that the Horizon had about 50,000 life signs aboard. Exactly the same number of colonists who had left Earth over a century ago. "Commander Walsh," Jake said carefully, "what year do you think it is?" "It's 2263, of course. We left Earth in 2260 and spent 3 years setting up the colony." Jake felt his heart racing. According to Earth's calendar, it was now 2387. Either Commander Walsh was lying, or something very strange had happened to the Horizon and its crew. "Sir," Lisa whispered, "I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from their ship. The power signatures don't match anything in our database." Jake nodded and opened the communication channel again. "Commander Walsh, we're going to need you to follow us back to Earth. There are some things we need to discuss." "Of course, Captain Morrison. My crew and colonists are eager to get home. We have some amazing discoveries to share with Earth." As Jake watched, the Horizon began to move, but something was wrong with the way it moved. The ship seemed to slide through space without using its engines. Lisa's sensors showed impossible energy readings coming from the vessel. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "their technology readings are off the charts. Whatever they're using for power, it's nothing like our fusion reactors, and their hull materials are showing properties that shouldn't be possible." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The Horizon looked like the same ship that had left Earth over a century ago, but it was clearly using technology that was far beyond anything humans had ever built. Admiral Helen Carter's face appeared on the main screen as Jake opened a channel to Earth Command. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been in charge of Earth's defense fleet for 10 years. Captain Morrison, we've been monitoring your communications with the Horizon. This is an unprecedented situation. Yes, ma'am. What are your orders? Escort them back to Earth, but maintain a safe distance. Do not allow them to approach any populated areas until we can figure out what happened to them. I'm sending additional ships to meet you. Understood, Admiral. As the two ships began their journey toward Earth, Jake couldn't stop thinking about the implications. If the Horizon crew was telling the truth, then they had somehow experienced only 3 years while over a century had passed on Earth, and they had apparently gained access to technology that was far beyond human capabilities. Lisa continued to monitor the Horizon as they traveled. Captain, their ship is definitely modified. I'm seeing hull sections that weren't in the original design, and whatever they're using for propulsion is generating energy levels that should be impossible. Any idea what kind of technology it might be? Jake asked. Nothing human, Lisa replied. The energy patterns are completely alien to anything in our databases. Ryan looked up from his console. Sir, I'm picking up transmissions from the Horizon to various locations in space. The signals are using an encryption method I've never seen before. Jake felt his worry growing stronger. The Horizon was not just a lost human ship returning home. It was something else entirely, carrying technology and knowledge that could change everything humanity thought they knew about the universe. As Earth grew larger on the viewing screen, Jake wondered if bringing the Horizon home was the right decision. Whatever had happened to them during their missing years, they were no longer the same humans who had left Earth so long ago. The journey to Earth took 5 days, and during that time Captain Jake Morrison found himself staring at the Horizon more than he cared to admit. The ship looked familiar from the outside, but every scan his crew performed showed that it had been changed in ways that defied explanation. On the 3rd day, Commander Walsh requested permission for Jake and a small team to visit the Horizon. Admiral Carter had given approval for limited contact, so Jake selected Lisa Parker and Dr. Amy Rodriguez, the Marathon's chief engineer, to accompany him. Dr. Rodriguez was a short woman with dark hair and bright eyes who could fix anything mechanical. She had been working with starship engines for 20 years and knew every piece of human technology ever built. As they approached the Horizon in a small shuttle, she kept checking her scanner and shaking her head. Captain, the energy readings from this ship are impossible, she said. Their power core is putting out 10 times more energy than our best fusion reactors, but I'm not detecting any radiation or waste heat. When they docked with the Horizon, Commander Walsh was waiting for them at the airlock. He looked exactly like the photos in his service record, as if he hadn't aged a single day since the ship disappeared. He was tall with brown hair and the kind of confident smile that made people trust him immediately. Welcome aboard the Horizon, Captain Morrison, Walsh said as he shook Jake's hand. I'm sorry for any confusion about our return. I hope we can clear things up quickly. As they walked through the ship's corridors, Jake noticed that everything looked wrong. The walls were made of materials that seemed to shift and change color as they moved. The lights didn't come from fixtures but appeared to glow directly from the ceiling itself. Commander, your ship has been significantly modified, Lisa observed. These materials aren't in any of our databases. Walsh nodded. We learned a lot during our time on Haven. The colonists and my crew had to adapt quickly to survive there. They entered what had once been the ship's main engineering section. Jake gasped at what he saw. The massive fusion reactor that should have powered the ship was gone, replaced by a small crystalline structure that floated in the center of the room without any visible support. Dr. Rodriguez walked up to the crystal and ran her scanner over it. Her face went pale as she read the results. This thing is drawing energy directly from space itself. It's manipulating quantum fields in ways that our physics says should be impossible. How did you build this? Jake asked. Walsh's expression became serious. We didn't build it, Captain. We learned how to make it from others. He led them to a conference room where several other crew members were waiting. Jake recognized some faces from the historical records, but like Walsh, none of them had aged at all. They all looked exactly as they had when the ship left Earth over a century ago. The truth is, Captain Morrison, we didn't just get lost in space, Walsh began. 3 years ago, during our hyperspace jump, something grabbed our ship and pulled us into another dimension. Lisa leaned forward in her chair. What kind of something? They call themselves the architects, Walsh replied. They're beings that exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. They've been watching humanity's expansion into space for decades. One of Walsh's officers, a woman named Carol Davis, continued the explanation. The architects decided that humans were advancing too quickly. They wanted to test us to see if we were ready for the kind of technology that could affect the entire galaxy. So they kidnapped 50,000 people? Jake asked, feeling angry. They gave us a choice, Walsh said. We could return to Earth immediately and forget everything that happened. Or we could accept their challenge and try to prove that humanity deserved to advance further. Dr. Rodriguez was still studying her scanner readings. What kind of challenge? Walsh activated a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed a planet with strange purple skies and twisted mountains that seemed to move on their own. They put us on Haven, Walsh explained. It's a world designed to test every aspect of survival and adaptation. The gravity changes randomly from day to day. The atmosphere shifts between different gas combinations every few hours. The native life forms evolve and adapt faster than anything on Earth. Carol Davis picked up the explanation. The architects gave us basic tools and one simple message: evolve or die. But you obviously survived, Lisa said. Walsh smiled for the first time since they had boarded his ship. We did more than survive. We thrived. In 3 years, our colonists learned to work together in ways that amazed even the architects. We didn't just adapt to Haven's challenges, we turned them into advantages. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her scanner. These modifications to your ship, they're based on architect technology. Based on it, but improved, Walsh said proudly. The architects were shocked when we started making their technology work better than their own versions. They had never seen any species do that before. Jake felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. What did they say when you improved their technology? Walsh's smile disappeared. That's why I needed to return to Earth, Captain. The architects are coming here. They're divided about what to do with humanity. What do you mean, divided? Jake asked. Carol Davis activated another holographic display that showed strange geometric shapes moving through space. Some of the architects think humanity has proven itself worthy of joining their galactic community. But others think we've advanced too quickly and have become a threat that needs to be eliminated. How long do we have? Jake asked. They're probably already in this solar system, Walsh replied. The architects don't travel through space the way we do. They can appear anywhere they want instantly. Dr. Rodriguez stood up quickly. Commander, I need to see more of your technology. If we're going to face these architects, we need to understand what we're dealing with. Walsh nodded. I was hoping you would say that. Our engineers have been working on adapting architect technology for human use. But Captain Morrison, there's something else you need to know. What is it? The test isn't over, Walsh said grimly. Haven was just the beginning. The architects are coming to test all of humanity, and the stakes this time are much higher than just survival. They're going to decide whether our entire species gets to continue existing. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Somehow, the fate of humanity had fallen into his hands, and he wasn't sure he was ready for what was coming. The news of the Horizon's return spread across human space faster than anyone expected. Within hours of their arrival at Earth, every colony, world, and space station knew about the impossible ship and its crew who had not aged in over a century. Some people celebrated the return of the lost colonists, while others feared what their advanced technology might mean. President Claire Bennett called an emergency meeting of the Terran Council in the Capitol building on Earth. Representatives from Mars, the Jupiter orbital stations, and dozens of other colonies gathered either in person or through holographic projection. The meeting room was filled with worried voices and heated arguments. Admiral Helen Carter stood at the front of the room and activated a large display screen. Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing a situation unlike anything in human history. The Horizon has returned with technology that appears to be decades ahead of our own capabilities. Senator Frank Miller from the Mars colonies raised his hand. Admiral, what exactly are we dealing with? The reports we're getting sound like science fiction. I wish they were fiction, Senator, Admiral Carter replied. Dr. Rodriguez has been studying the Horizon's modifications for the past 2 days. Doctor, please share your findings. Dr. Amy Rodriguez stepped forward, looking tired but determined. She had barely slept since examining the Horizon's technology. The modifications to their ship are beyond anything we thought possible. They've created materials that exist in multiple dimensions at the same time. Their power source draws energy from the quantum vacuum itself. Representative Joan Stevens from the outer colonies looked confused. What does that mean in practical terms? It means they can do things that break our understanding of physics, Dr. Rodriguez explained. Their ship can phase in and out of normal space. They can generate enough energy to power an entire city from a device the size of a coffee cup. And according to their medical scans, they've found a way to stop aging completely. The room erupted in excited chatter. The possibility of stopping aging had been humanity's dream for centuries. But Admiral Carter raised her hand for silence. "There's more," she said grimly. "Commander Walsh has warned us that the beings who gave them this technology are coming to Earth." President Bennett leaned forward in her chair. "Tell us about these architects." Admiral Carter nodded to Jake Morrison, who had been standing quietly at the side of the room. "Captain Morrison spent several days aboard the Horizon. He can explain better than I can." Jake walked to the front of the room, feeling nervous about addressing such important people. The architects are alien beings that exist across multiple dimensions. They've been testing species throughout the galaxy for millions of years. Most species fail their tests and are left alone, but the few that succeed are given a choice. "What kind of choice?" asked Senator Miller. "Join their collective and give up independence or be eliminated as a potential threat," Jake replied. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Representative Stevens was the first to speak. "So we're facing either slavery or extinction." "That's what Commander Walsh believes," Jake confirmed. "But there's something else. The Horizon crew didn't just pass their test. They exceeded it in ways the architects never expected. They improved architect technology and created new solutions that the aliens themselves couldn't imagine." Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward again. "This is both good news and bad news. The good news is that human creativity and innovation are apparently unique in the galaxy. The bad news is that some of the architects now see us as a threat that has grown too powerful too quickly." President Bennett stood up. "How long do we have to prepare?" Before anyone could answer, Lisa Parker burst into the room. She had been monitoring space around Earth from the marathon, and her face was pale with shock. "They're here," she announced breathlessly. "I'm detecting massive spatial distortions throughout the solar system. Whatever these architects are, they're not using ships like we know them." Admiral Carter immediately activated the emergency communication system. "All defense fleets to maximum alert. Begin evacuating civilian populations from outer system installations." On the main display screen, images began appearing from telescopes and sensors throughout the solar system. What they showed was beyond anything the human mind was prepared to understand. Massive geometric structures were materializing in space, but they seemed to exist only partially in normal reality. Parts of the structures flickered in and out of existence, and their shapes seemed to change depending on the angle from which they were viewed. "My God," whispered Dr. Rodriguez. "They're existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We're only seeing the parts of their ships that overlap with our reality." Jake felt his communication device buzz. Commander Walsh was calling from the Horizon. "Captain Morrison, the architects want to communicate. They're requesting a meeting with Earth's representatives." "How do they want to communicate?" Jake asked. "Direct neural interface," Walsh replied. "They don't use spoken language. They transfer concepts and images directly into your mind." President Bennett looked around the room at the worried faces of humanity's leaders. "We don't have much choice, do we?" Admiral Carter shook her head. "No, ma'am. If we refuse to meet with them, they might interpret that as hostile intent. Then we meet with them," President Bennett decided. "Captain Morrison, Commander Walsh, you'll represent humanity in these negotiations. Dr. Rodriguez, I want you there too in case technical questions arise." As the group prepared to leave for the meeting, one of the architect's structures moved closer to Earth. Through the viewing windows of the council building, they could see it hanging in the sky like an impossible star. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, shifting between different geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders again. In a few hours, he would be face to face with beings that could decide the fate of every human in the galaxy. He only hoped that humanity's greatest strength, their ability to find creative solutions to impossible problems, would be enough to save them from extinction. The architects had come to judge humanity, but Jake was beginning to think that maybe it was time for humanity to judge them as well. The meeting with the architects took place aboard a special platform that materialized in space between Earth and the Moon. Jake Morrison, Dr. Amy Rodriguez, and Commander Kevin Walsh traveled there in a shuttle, knowing that the next few hours could determine whether humanity survived or faced complete extinction. The platform was unlike anything they had ever seen. It existed in multiple dimensions at once, appearing solid under their feet, but translucent when they looked at the walls. The air itself seemed to shimmer with energy, and Jake could feel a strange buzzing in his mind as they walked toward the center of the structure. 3 beings waited for them there, but calling them beings was not quite accurate. They appeared as shifting geometric patterns of light and shadow that hurt to look at directly. When they communicated, it was not through words but through images and concepts that appeared directly in the humans' minds. The first entity identified itself as the Prime Architect. Its thoughts felt ancient and tired, like the voice of someone who had lived for millions of years. The second was the War Architect, whose mental presence felt angry and dangerous. The third called itself the Observer, and seemed curious about the humans but remained mostly silent. The Prime Architect began the communication by flooding their minds with images of countless worlds and species. They saw civilizations that had risen and fallen across the galaxy, most of them failing the architect tests within months or years. Only a few had succeeded in mastering the technology provided to them, and those few had been absorbed into the architect collective, losing their independence but gaining immortality. But then the War Architect took control of the communication, showing them darker images. Civilizations that had advanced too quickly and become threats to galactic stability, species that had used architect technology to wage wars that destroyed entire star systems. The War Architect's message was clear. Humanity was advancing too fast and had to be stopped before they became a danger to everyone else. Commander Walsh stepped forward and projected his own thoughts back to the architects. He showed them images of Haven and how the human colonists had not only survived the impossible conditions, but had learned to work together in ways that even surprised themselves. He demonstrated how humans had improved architect technology, not through aggression but through creativity and cooperation. Dr. Rodriguez added her own thoughts to the communication, showing the architects the modifications that the Horizon crew had made to their technology. She explained how humans had found new solutions to problems that the architects had considered unsolvable for millions of years. The Observer Architect suddenly became more active in the communication. It projected a sense of fascination and curiosity about human methods. It had been watching the Horizon crew during their time on Haven and had never seen any species adapt so quickly or find such innovative solutions to the challenges they faced. But the War Architect remained unconvinced. It showed them images of what it believed humanity would become, a violent species that would use advanced technology to conquer and destroy other civilizations. It demanded that humanity be eliminated before this future could come to pass. Jake felt anger rising in his chest as he watched these images. He projected his own thoughts back to the architects, showing them the true nature of humanity. He showed them how humans had explored space not to conquer but to learn and discover. He demonstrated how human colonies worked together and shared resources instead of fighting over them. The communication session lasted for hours, with both sides presenting their arguments and evidence. Finally, the Prime Architect made a decision. Humanity would be given 30 Earth days to prove that they could handle advanced technology responsibly. If they succeeded, they would be accepted as an independent species and allowed to keep their newfound abilities. If they failed, or if they showed any signs of aggressive expansion, they would face complete extinction. As the humans returned to Earth, Jake felt both hope and terror. 30 days was not much time to prove the worth of an entire species, but it was better than immediate destruction. The countdown began immediately, and humanity responded in ways that surprised even themselves. Instead of panicking or fighting among themselves, humans across the galaxy began working together with a level of cooperation that had never been seen before. Dr. Rodriguez led something called Project Synthesis, bringing together the best engineers and scientists from every human colony. They began studying architect technology and combining it with human innovations to create new solutions that neither species could have developed alone. On Mars, Engineer Tony Martinez used the new technology to build structures that could repair themselves automatically. The buildings learned to adapt to changes in the environment and could grow larger or smaller depending on how many people needed to live in them. The Jupiter orbital platforms became massive construction sites where humans built defensive systems that could protect the entire solar system. But these were not weapons designed to attack others. They were shields meant to protect human space from any threats that might arise. Most importantly, human colonies throughout known space began sharing their technology freely with each other. Instead of keeping secrets or competing for advantages, every discovery was immediately transmitted to every other human settlement. Scientists on distant worlds worked together on the same problems, sharing ideas and solutions in real time. The architects watched all of this activity with growing confusion. In their millions of years of testing other species, they had never seen anything like it. Most civilizations either stagnated after receiving advanced technology or used it to try to conquer their neighbors. Humans were doing neither. Commander Walsh revealed to Jake that the Horizon crew had one more secret to share. During their time on Haven, they had discovered that the planet was not just a testing ground, but a living entity. Haven had chosen to trust humanity and had shared not only technology but also knowledge about the architects themselves, including the location of their home dimension and how to reach it. As the 30-day deadline approached, Jake realized that this was no longer just about humanity proving themselves worthy of survival. The architects were facing their own crisis, and somehow humanity had become the key to resolving it. The test was about to become something much larger than anyone had expected. With only 3 days left before the architect deadline, humanity made a decision that shocked everyone, including themselves. Instead of waiting to be judged, they chose to act first. Using the technology they had learned from the Horizon crew and the innovations they had developed during the 30-day crisis, human ships began appearing throughout architect space. Captain Jake Morrison led a fleet of human vessels equipped with the new dimensional technology that Dr. Amy Rodriguez and her teams had perfected. The ships could phase between dimensions just like architect vessels, but they moved in ways that confused even the ancient aliens. Human ships appeared and disappeared unpredictably, following patterns that seemed random but were actually based on human intuition and creativity. Commander Kevin Walsh piloted the Horizon alongside Jake's fleet as they entered the architect home dimension. What they found there was beyond anything they had imagined. The architect collective was not the unified civilization they had appeared to be. Their home dimension was filled with massive structures that were fighting each other, creating explosions of energy that tore holes in space itself. The Prime Architect and the War Architect factions had begun an actual civil war. The War Architect had convinced many others that the only way to maintain galactic stability was to eliminate any species that showed signs of advancing beyond Architect control. The Prime Architect faction wanted to preserve the old ways of testing and absorbing successful species into their collective. But both sides had grown weak over millions of years. They had become so focused on testing other species that they had stopped innovating themselves. The War Architect faction had military power but no new ideas, while the Prime Architect faction had wisdom but lacked the strength to defend their beliefs. Dr. Rodriguez studied the energy patterns of the Architect Civil War from her position on Jake's ship. "Captain, their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also incredibly old. They haven't developed anything new in millions of years. They're using the same weapons and defenses they had when they first became a galactic civilization." Jake opened a communication channel to both architect factions. "This is Captain Morrison of the human fleet. We're here to offer a solution that can help everyone." The War Architect's response came as a flood of angry images in Jake's mind. It demanded to know why humans had dared to enter architect space without permission. It threatened to destroy every human ship immediately. But the Prime Architect seemed curious about the human presence. It asked through mental communication why humans had come to the architect home dimension instead of waiting for judgment on Earth. Commander Walsh answered by projecting images of human cooperation during the 30-day period. He showed how humans had shared technology freely instead of hoarding it for advantage. He demonstrated how human colonies had worked together to solve problems that no single world could handle alone. Dr. Rodriguez added her own thoughts to the communication, showing the architects how human engineering approaches differed from their own. Where architects sought perfection and permanence, humans embraced change and adaptation. Where architects built technology to last forever, humans built technology that could grow and evolve. The observer architect suddenly joined the communication with excitement. It had been studying human methods during the Civil War and had realized something important. Human approaches to problem-solving could restore the architect collective's ability to innovate and grow. But before negotiations could continue, the War Architect faction launched a massive attack on the human fleet. Weapons that could destroy entire planets focused their energy on the small group of human ships. What happened next amazed even the humans themselves. Instead of fighting back with traditional weapons, they used tactics that no one had ever seen before. Jake's ship phased through the energy beams as if they were made of light, while other human vessels seemed to exist in multiple places at the same time. Dr. Rodriguez had equipped the human ships with technology that allowed them to repair damage by manipulating time itself. When a ship was hit by architect weapons, it could restore itself to the condition it had been in moments before the attack. Some ships even seemed to fix themselves before they were damaged, as if they knew what was going to happen. The turning point came when the colonists from Haven arrived in vessels that were completely different from anything anyone had seen before. These ships were not built but grown, using principles they had learned from Haven's living ecosystem. The vessels looked more like enormous trees or coral reefs than traditional spacecraft. These organic ships did something that shocked everyone. Instead of destroying war architect vessels, they began converting them. The living ships reached out with tendrils of energy and somehow changed the architect technology, showing it new possibilities for growth and evolution instead of just destruction. The War Architect faction found their weapons becoming tools for creation instead of destruction. Their military vessels began transforming into exploration ships and research stations. The energy they had been using to fight was redirected into building new structures and developing new technologies. The Prime Architect realized what the humans had accomplished. They had not defeated the War Architect faction. They had transformed them. They had shown the architects a way to end their civil war without victory or defeat, but through evolution and growth. The observer architect projected a sense of wonder and gratitude. It had learned more about innovation and adaptation in 30 days of watching humans than it had in millions of years of testing other species. The War Architect, now transformed by contact with the living ships from Haven, admitted that it had been wrong about humanity. Humans were not a threat to galactic stability. They were the key to restoring it. Their ability to find creative solutions to impossible problems was exactly what the galaxy needed. Commander Walsh made the final proposal that changed everything. Instead of testing species to judge their worthiness, the architects could invite them to contribute their unique perspectives to solving galactic challenges. Different species could work together, combining their strengths instead of competing for survival. The Prime Architect agreed immediately, and even the former War Architect admitted that this approach was better than the old system of testing and absorption. The collective abandoned their role as galactic judges and became partners in exploration and development. Jake Morrison returned to Earth with news that transformed humanity's place in the universe. Humans were no longer alone in the galaxy, and they were not subjects waiting for approval from advanced aliens. They were partners in a civilization that spanned dimensions, bringing their unique gift for innovation and cooperation to challenges that had existed for millions of years. Dr. Rodriguez continued developing new technologies that combined human creativity with architect knowledge and Haven's living systems. Together, they began creating solutions that none of the three could have imagined alone. The story ended with humanity taking its place among the stars not as conquerors or subjects, but as the species that had taught an ancient civilization how to grow again.